Learning Peribes Halacha Yud Gimel. The Rambam says, Nichnas Achbo Lebayis V'kika B'fiv. The Achbo went into the house and he had chometz in his mouth. V'yotza Achbo Mishom V'kika B'fiv. And another Achbor mouse went out and it had also a kibbutz b'fiv. Hu harishon shenichnas, hu achon sheyotza. We say that it's the same one that went in. That's the one that went out. Now we're going to discuss in this simon when we don't know if the one that went out is the one that went in, or a black one went in and a white one went out, or a mouse went in and a rodent went out. Whether you have to be nullified or not. If there's a shiur to bring a mumche for bedikas chometz, how much is he chayev to spend on a bedika? What's called a chover, and the issur. Let's see. So the Rambam said if a mouse went into the house and it had a piece of chometz in its mouth, and it went out and had a piece of another achba came out, or that same achba, we're not sure, and it had a piece of chometz in its mouth, we say this is the first one that went in, it's the one that went out. You don't have to be boidik, because we say that the one that went in went out. The first one that went in was white, dark, black. The one that went out is white. So livdoik. We don't say that maybe one took it away from the other. One mouse went in, and instead of a mouse coming out, we have a larger rodent. So we don't say that the chulda took it away from the achbor, or ate the achbor, and now has the bread. After we see the achbor go in, we see the chulda, the larger rodent, having a mouse in its mouth, which is holding a piece of chometz in its mouth, and it's all livzoik. Then you don't have to check, because that for sure, the piece of chometz that we're now viewing is the piece of chometz that was in the mouth of the achbor, and it's still there, but the achbor has been taken by the larger chulda. The Magen Mishnah cites psochim. Over asked the question: Achbor went into a house and it had a piece of bread, and Achbor went out and had a piece of bread. Do we say that they're the same or not? Or maybe a different one went out, and the first one is still inside with this piece of chometz. So the Gemara says, if you'll say, now whenever you have an imtim tzaloim in the Gemara, according to the Rambam, that's the halacha. So it says imtim tzaloim, that you assume that that's the same achbor. We still have a different question. So the Magen Mishnah says the Rambam, where in every place, whenever there's a doubt, and the Gemara takes one side and continues it, that's the halacha. Therefore, he paskins that if it came out, you don't have to be boidik. The next shaila is, what happens if it went in, a white one went in, and a black one went out. They both had a piece of chometz in their mouth. Do we say they exchanged it or not? Or it's a separate mouse and a separate piece of chometz. The Gemara continues, and if you'll say that one mouse doesn't take from another, so therefore you can't say that the chometz is the same piece of chometz, still we have another question. So the Magen Mishnah again says that Rambam paskins that you don't say, because it says imtim tzalaima, therefore you don't say, and therefore that it came from the first one, and therefore it definitely the first one's still in there. We have to find it, and we have to be checked. So the Gemara continues. An achbor went in, had a piece of chometz, and another achbor came out, a chulda came out, a larger rodent, and had a kikar b'fiyah. Do we say that even though one mouse doesn't take from another mouse, but a larger rodent takes from a smaller one, and we do not have to check? Or do we say that no, the chulda has its own piece of chometz, and we're not sure whether we have to check or not? The Gemara continues, and if you'll say that if the Hulda, the larger rodent, would have taken it, he would have taken not only the piece of bread but also the mouse in its mouth. This is not therefore that piece of meat of chametz that was taken by the achbar. So here we have a conclusion according to the Rambam. There's another question. So here again, the Rambam assumes that the Gemara has concluded that we do not say that the Hulda took from the achbar, but because it doesn't have the achbar in its mouth. So now is what happens. We see the achbar go in with the bread, and the Hulda come out with the kikar and the achbar. Since it's holding both, then we say he's not chayav to be boidik, or maybe we say it's not the same achbar, it's a different one. It had a different piece of bread in its mouth. And the other Gemara says teku. So the Machon Nesher says that here the Rambam paskins that even though since it's teku, we're not sure. Therefore, we're makel because it's a suffix drabonon, and he has already checked his house, and therefore he doesn't have to check it again. The Kesef brings a text which says nichnas achbor v'kika b'fiv v'yotza mishon. And what came out? Hulda v'kika b'fiv. He doesn't have to check. The kiko was the one in the achbor, meaning that we assume that Hulda took it from the achbor. But we don't have this text in our Gemara. Gesef Mishnah says, according to Rambam, the Gesef was in the Gemara a little different. That Rava asked if a mouse went in with chametz, and another mouse came out with chametz, if you're going to say this is the one that went in was the one that went out, what happens if a white one went in and a black one came out? And if you'll say achbarim don't take from each other, what happens if an achbar went in and a hulda went out and it had chametz, and there it's where we say teku. Now there's another step where we're saying that if the hulda would have taken it, he would be holding not only the kikor but also the mouse. Thus, in that instance, it's not the same kikor because he doesn't have the mouse. And there, according to that Giz, is another question. We see an achbar go in and the hulda goes out and it has both the mouse and the kikor. Since it's holding both, certainly it's the same piece of bread and there's no need to check. Or do we say that if it would be referring to that same achbar, we would have had to find the kikor in the mouth of the achbar and not in the mouth of the rodent. Or maybe when the achbar saw the rodent, he wanted to flee, so he dropped the piece of bread, and that's why the hulda, when he got the achbar, returned for the piece of bread. Now he's taking them both out of the house, and that's where the Gemara remains with the teku. We go to the next page. The Machon Nesher explains that this teku is called a suffix in the Rabbanon, or mekel. He doesn't have to check. Rabbeinu Manoach adds that even though he doesn't have to check, but bittul he has to do. He means to emphasize that we say imtim tzaloima is the conclusion, but teku, even though that's when we have a conclusion, we go on to the next step. Then for sure you don't even have to do bittul. But when you have a teku, since we end up with a question, it's a suffix rabbanon. But on the deraisa, maybe there's chametz in the house, you have to be mevatel. You have to nullify. The Tur says in the original two dinim, he says that you do not paskin like the imtim tzaloima. He doesn't use this general rule of the Rambam, but it remains a question that's not answered, and therefore in all instances he has to be mevatel, because the suffix is on the chiyuv b'diko, and we say suffix rabbanon lekulo. But if he wasn't mevatel, he's chayav to be boidik. He's suffix the raisa lechumra. The Gra in Simetul Lamed Ches explains the Rambam Shita that he passing like the Imtim Tzaloima. But the Torah does not conclude that whenever the Gemara says Imtim Tzaloima, if this is the case, then what would happen if this is the case? We don't assume that means we accept that second situation. And therefore remains a suffix. If it's only a suffix rabbanon, So it's a kula. But if he didn't nullify, it's a suffix deraisa, and he has to check. Because the Beis Yosef is questions whether the Torah means only when he nullifies before the suffix began. This we mentioned before. The fact that he didn't nullify before the suffix, does that leave it as a suffix deraisa? And even though now he's checking because of the Rabbanan, it's because it's on a suffix deraisa? Or do we say that once he was mevatel, it's only a suffix derabanan, and the Racham did not require in a suffix derabanan to be body again, and that's the way the Bach writes, and not like the Ramah and Darkei Moshe, who is of the opinion that the Torah is of the opinion that only if he nullified before the suffix began, it's called the suffix derabanan. But after, if he hadn't nullified yet, and the rat went in, or the mouse went in, the bittul doesn't change it to suffix derabanan. And that's the way the Rosh opinions as well. Thus, we have three possibilities in the situations of suffix that were mentioned. The Rambam paskins that you don't need bedika or bittul, because we always say that we always infer that the piece of bread that he took in, he took out. The Torah says that if he was mevatel first, then we say he doesn't have to, because bedikas chametz is derabanan. He doesn't have to go in. But if he didn't nullify first, then he has to be mevatel, because it says it's a suffix deraisa, even if he nullifies now. And the Beis Yosef and the Darkei Moshe disagree if after the suffix began, a person would be mevatel. Does it change it to a derabanan lekula or not? The Mishnah Lamelach has a question. Why do we say it's a svek sveka? Why do we say it's only one doubt? Whenever we have a svek sveka, a double question, a double doubt, we are always very, very lenient. Savik Rishon, maybe this one piece of bread that went in came out. Second question is, even if it's a different piece, still maybe the Achbar ate the first piece. And when you have a svek sveka, you don't even have to nullify, because that's the rule. We're very, very lenient. The Ramah asked this, and he explains, he himself asks it, and he explains that all these questions do not create a svek sveka, because they're all one item. Is this the chametz or not the chametz? And therefore it doesn't matter how many options you put on it, we remain with that general question. Is it a piece or isn't it? Therefore it remains one doubt. Now, you have to bring a mumche, and how much do you have to spend on it? Nochash shenichas lecheder upas befiv. Rambam says if a nochash went into a room and it had bread in its mouth, you don't have to bring a snake expert. So the Maggid Mishnah explains this too is a question that was not decided in Psochim 10a. If a nochash went in, do you have to bring a chava, meaning a specialist, to take it out? Meaning, the Chacham required a person to do bedika, but they didn't require him to spend money for it. There's a din regarding a say, and a law says how much a person has to spend to mekayim it, but this is the Rabbanon. The Chacham did not require you to go spend for a specialist to find this snake. Rashi says it's enough, therefore, in such an instance, that he's mevatel, or maybe it doesn't matter, and he has to check, even though he doesn't have to get a specialist. The Gemara remains with the suffix. Therefore, the Rambam says it's a kula, because the Chacham are the ones who require you to check, and in this instance, since you're terrified to check for a snake, they permitted you to be mevatel, and that's what Rabbeinu Menoach says. That you don't have to spend a lot of money. The Chacham did not require you to expend a large sum of money, and therefore it's enough to be mevatel it. But if it's only a bit of money, then certainly every person wants to complete a mitzvah with both his body and with his money. And Halacha Yud Ches, we'll see that the Rambam says it specifically that a person wants the mitzvah should be done not only with his physical body, but with money as well. What's a chava? The Rabbeinu Manoel says Chav is a person who knows how to draw forth snakes and scorpions, and they don't bother him, as we find in Sanhedrin Samachay A, 65a. V'choy v'chovo is an Issa Torah. Echod chava godel v'echod chava koten. If he does it with magic, it's forbidden for a Jew to do, because and anything you bringing a chover is also also. So we have the question to ask: how could you, if that's the case, you can't use a chover? So the Minchas Elazar explains that we're talking about a chava goy, not a Jew is doing it, and therefore there's no issa for a goy to do it. Today, where we have specialists who do it not with magic, then for sure, if they're cheap, then a person should get this snake finder to come. We'll continue the next parak in the next shiur.